Hi, everyone, and welcome to Good and Well. I'm super excited about today's episode because we're going to be talking to Dr. Corey Emanuel. He is a dear friend of mine, and we're going to be talking about the effects of mass media on your brain. So, anything you can think about having to do with mass media is what we're going to be discussing today, and how what we watch can affect the way that we live our lives and actually affect our brains. So I'm really excited to go ahead and bring him on here. He is already here. He is ready to go. But just a little brief background about my relationship with Corey. I met Corey through my brother, and we've become friends. We've had so many conversations over the years that we've known each other, and just really gotten to know each other. He's recently received his doctorate, so I'm really excited to talk to him about this topic. And he is a all-around great guy. He's a so many things, which we'll discuss through this as well, I'm sure. But can't wait to introduce you to my good friend, Corey Emanuel, Dr. Corey Emanuel. Hello, Corey.
What's happening, Brittany?
How
What's
are
going on?
you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I like the hat, looking good. It's true to the photo. I like
You
it.
know, try to do a little something in the midst of a pandemic.
Consistency. I like it.
Yeah, you look great. I love the
Thank you.
curls. They're back
They're
after a
back.
few days
You
of
know, curls, straight hair only lasts so long when you have naturally curly hair. It's like, all right, cool. Got to work out. So I guess I got to put the curls away.
exactly. But you look
But
great.
thank you so much. It's so good. I feel crazy because this is probably the first time that I've really seen you
Right.
all of pandemic, and I haven't seen you in person. So this
Yeah,
is
we
kind
should
of,
we should tell the folks watching. Brittany and I have spent a many of days by the pool and
yes, we have.
game nights and all that
Yeah.
stuff that we haven't had a chance to do.
No, we've had some. I was saying a little bit before you got on. We've had great conversations, and we've had some great times. And it's been months since I've seen you. So so I'm excited to catch up. In addition to talk about what we're here to talk about.
For
So
sure.
for those of you that kind of missed the beginning, today I'm going to be talking to Corey about the effect of mass media on our brains, on our thought processes. And it's such an important thing. I think especially now with as prevalent as media is in our world, whether it be TV, social media, there's all kinds of media now that we have to take into account.
For sure. For sure. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, so let's just kind of dive right in. My question is, and so for those of those that don't know, what is media psychology, and how did you decide to pursue that as your doctorate? What made you be like, this is the lane I'm going?
Yeah, that's sort of been the million-dollar question. Like it's one of those things where we, as you said, we engage and we interact with media all the time. Psychology is just like, who we are, how we
Hmm.
operate, why we do what we do. And it's really just a fusion of the two. So, more succinctly, media psychology, really what we do is we examine, we assess mass media's impact on our human behavior.
Mm.
So some examples of that would be, for example, we might look at video game violence, like something like Grand Theft Auto. How might that be associated with school shootings?
Hmm.
Another example might be like a popular show like Bridgerton.
Hmm.
How do fans of a show like Bridgerton do they experience any decrease in their relationship satisfaction
Mm.
because perhaps they are a fan of one particular star of the show and they're
Right,
now
right. And now
comparing,
I'm like, why am I
right, they're
dating this
comparing
guy
their
over here?
partner.
Right.
Yeah, they're comparing their partner to one of
Mm.
their, fans, one of the stars on the show. So there's so many layers to it. One of the things that I've looked at most recently, specifically, is like Black media consumers,
Hmm.
and how when we sort of associate with this notion of Black excellence, how does that then show up in what we aspire to do, achieve, look aesthetically?
Right.
So yeah, there's so many different layers, and that was one of to answer your second question. That's what drew me to this field, to this industry, was I just felt like there was so many opportunities, and technology and social media, all of these things are constantly evolving,
Hmm.
that I felt like, there needed to be some people that were studying and trying to figure out how to make sense of it. So that's sort of what led me to it.
That's awesome. And it's such like you said, it's ever growing, it's ever changing. It's such an interesting form. Because even I think about when, when we first started, and I'm sure, I mean, I know you remember probably back in the days when Facebook started and it was like only for college students, only, and like you had to be on a wait list for your college to get on. There were all these things, but it just wasn't, the original intention wasn't for what it is now. It was just this,
Absolutely.
small connection kind of, and like, oh, I can meet someone from other colleges and I can kind of like maybe with my classmates and stuff and really get to know people. But it's really evolved from that into what it is now. And it's crazy because it hasn't been that many years. I mean, to think about, yes, from the very beginning, it's been some years, but I mean, there's been like evolutions ever since then. But even to like what it is now, it's so crazy from where it started.
Right, for sure. And that, it's unlike other areas so there's so many fields of psychology, right? But to your point, this is brand new. Like there's not a lot of psychologists that were working in this field because it didn't exist. So there was another opportunity, as I felt like there needs to be people who are deeply rooted in the trenches of this work as it's continuing to evolve.
Yeah, it is really, it's just really cool to see the transition and how it is. Someone said they were on back then because they're old. I'm like, I am too. I was there too. It's just that memory of what that was. And so it's really cool to see that it is a study now, because it really has shaped so much of our world. And even, I did some work in social media spaces like marketing and things like that. But there were people who were actually going to school for it, and I'm like, I don't know, I just like Instagram. Right. Like I like posting stuff, but it wasn't as if I knew like the whys behind it and the actual drive behind it. But now there's actual classes for it. So I think it's so cool that it's a whole doctorate that you can just like study. And yes, there is the TV portion and all of that are other forms of media, but that included in it is new media. That's really changed the game. It's just, it blows my mind how that all works.
Yeah. I mean, think about, the Hulus and the Netflix, like these are new technologies. Yeah. This is a new way of accessing information that we didn't have before.
Right. I love it. So we are bombarded with so much media, day-to-day basis, whether it's social media, TV, radio, whatever that may be. And sometimes it's easy. I think we can become naive to how much it truly does affect us. I think it's because it's such a part of your life. It's such a part of things that you deal with on a daily. You're just kind of like, oh yeah, and in one ear out the other, but it's not just in and out, it's stopping in between the ears. And so how can we become better gatekeepers about what we do consume when there is so much going on and we are so naive to the fact of like that it's even happening most of the time?
For sure. And like I always tell people, as a media psychologist, it really is my responsibility to look to both the pros and the challenges around all things mass media, technology, social media. But as sort of a standard rule, as I tell people, don't think of it as, what is Instagram, Clubhouse, Facebook, what are they doing to me? Like, let's go ahead and just sort of take that off to the table. Instead, I try to urge people to think about, who am I as I'm showing up to these different platforms? Right? And I give you some examples. So what we know is that as we looked at Instagram and we looked at Facebook, things like that, is that people who experience or have low self-esteem, social media outlet like one like Instagram can lead to, say, body dissatisfaction. We know that, we've studied that.
Right.
But that's not the same. The misconception is Instagram is giving me low self-esteem. Or, I didn't have low self-esteem until I got on Instagram. Right, and that's not necessarily true. There are things about Instagram, people that you're seeing that can trigger certain feelings in you. But it's not just showing up and logging on that immediately now I have depression because I've logged on. Right, so I think we have to be very careful about how we think about social media and technology. But I tell people, we'll use the case of low self-esteem, for example. What we know about what psychology says rather about low self-esteem is that's something that originates really in our early years, adolescent years. And it's something that comes about during conditioning with our primary caregivers first. So this whole, notion of low self-esteem being, sort of sparked by social media, really there's some underpinnings already there, usually. So
it's the owning of what that is underneath of it instead of just the blame on the media, which it right, like you said, the trigger, but it's not the onus is not on that particular
Exactly.
thing.
So I tell people when it comes to particularly social media, you know, be aware of what your vulnerabilities are and when you're most vulnerable, right? I think right now, as we think about everything that's happened with the pandemic and even rolling into 2021, we all have some vulnerabilities when it comes to our mental health right now.
Right.
So that might mean that you need to do a detox from social media. If you're finding that you're already really struggling with, you know, low self-esteem, for example, maybe you haven't exercised like you did before the pandemic, and now you're getting on social media and other people are working out and that's triggering you, then you might want to take a step back and say, you know what, until I'm gonna, you know, maybe get back on my A game and be working out, I probably don't need to, you know, log on to social media or unfollow certain accounts that are triggering you too. That's another sort of rule I tell people is, you know, carefully curate what it is you're seeing when you're on social media.
Yeah.
So those are just some of my 2 cents on it.
That's really awesome. I think, you know, and I think that I never really thought about, you know, that social media not being the main problem, but it being a trigger. Like I've always thought of it as, you know, because we hear like social media is a blessing and a curse. Like you know, and that's, you know, true, but also it's about owning what is behind that, because you when you're not owning that, you're just using that as kind of the scapegoat of like what's going on with you. It's like, oh yeah, like it's because I follow these things, and then we just fall into this trap of, well, there's nothing I can do about it. Like it's because of social media. Like social media makes us this way, when we do have more power over it than we think we do. I think we've kind of like given over to the powers of the media. You know, we're just like, there's nothing we can do about it. The media is negative. The media is this. The media is that. But it's like we do have a say.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I really like you bringing up the trigger thing. So I was like, those are things that I maybe don't think about of like, there's the behind it, like what's my why behind it, or what's my emotion behind it versus just like, what am I seeing? And I think that, you know, there's this whole space of, we're in this like, oh, I'm so authentic. But what is that? What is really authenticity anymore? Even like when you're showing up on these spaces, because we're in this space of it's just there's so much to it, but you know, there's like that authenticity and like, oh, I'm showing up authentically, but if you look at it, you're showing up to portray something, or you're showing up to toward what your filtered things are that you're seeing. Like that's how you are, that's how you're filtering your view and even your view of yourself.
Right. And I tell people, you know, I look at social media in particular as an opportunity, because, for example, if there are certain things that you're seeing in people's feeds that are activating certain feelings from you, particularly negative feelings or emotions, to me, that's an opportunity to pause and be like, okay, what is this about? Like every time I see this dude's content or this girl's content, I feel some type of way, right? To like not immediately go on the attack of that person. Instead, ask yourself, like, why am I so bothered by this? Is it that like I've sort of fallen off my game with my career and I haven't been as focused as I need to be, and because they're thriving and they're winning in their whatever their arena is, I feel some kind of way. They're not doing anything. Social media isn't like making you out to be a bad person, right?
Yeah, it is.
So
it
that,
is very
again, knowing those vulnerabilities.
Yeah, and especially during the pandemic, because I think at the very beginning of the pandemic, there were like kind of two camps of like, give yourself grace, and then there was other camp of like, oh, like so like, you know, if you're not taking this time to better yourself or do this and do that, then you're not this and you're not that. And so then, you know, so you're either feeling attacked and you're like, okay, you know, you're like, whoa, I'm not doing those things, because we are, I mean, this is an uncharted territory. This is a place that none of us have been before. And so like for me, I realized how privileged I was and how much of a blessing it was to be able to pivot and restart this business. But it didn't start out like that. You know, I started out like, holy crap, I lost my job, you know, like everybody else did. But at the same time, there was a point where I was like, I don't want to do anything else. I want to lay in my bed. I want to do this. But then it's like, you see people who are like, if you can't figure out what to do with your time when you have all this time to you have an infinite amount of time. And so I'm like, oh my God, I do have an infinite amount of time. Do I need to be
Right.
doing something? And then you have people that are like, whatever, give yourself grace. And, you know, and there's like, there's positives and negatives to each one of them. You know, there's that like not falling into a trap of like, of just like depression and those things. So maybe finding something you can do during this time that can find joy. But it was very interesting at the very beginning of those two camps of like, I want nothing, I don't want to do anything. And those that were like, if you're not doing anything, you're lazy, you're like, and it was attacking.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that there are certain themes that no matter where you are and no matter what day you get on social media, there are certain themes that are going to emerge. And I think that it is around self-love, it is around self-acceptance, and it's around self-worth. Like you will get gut punched on any one of those three, perhaps all three on any given day, as you're interacting and encountering certain content, quotes, you know, people being on vacation. You're constantly gonna be sort of appraising where you are. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But when you get into sort of that spiral of negative emotions, I do encourage people to maybe just take a step back. Maybe you need to log off, delete the app for a couple of days and come back. But even while you're away, be thinking about that moment, that instant that led you to want to move away and pull away from social media, because I'm telling you, life is always speaking to us. And I think social media is one of the voices that is used for that.
Right. And I actually just learned during this whole pandemic, everything, the term doom scrolling. I had never heard of that. And it was like, you know, where you like kind of go in to scroll to start just to like take your mind off something. And then it's like, you keep going and it gets worse and worse and all. And then you just feel awful when it's like the point of going on was to like, okay, I need it. Maybe like work's been crazy. I need a distraction. I'm just going to like scroll a couple things. And then before you know it, you're in this like deep dive of like, I'm worthless, I'm useless, I'm this. And you're just like, because you're watching all these other things. And that was something that a whole new term to me. And I was like, oh my God, I do that. Like, I think or I just scroll for like 24 hours a day. I'm like, oh, I'm still on Instagram, you know?
Well, and I think that's one of the things. So I'm a little, I admit, fascinated with TikTok. Because again, as a behavioral scientist, we're sort of trained to always be observing people's behaviors and looking for patterns. And so some of the things that I've seen specifically on TikTok is that people like the authenticity of TikTok. They often self-reports say, you know, Instagram is always about sort of presenting your best self, you in your best light, going on your best vacation. And that's cool and that's great. But there is an authenticity level within TikTok of people really just embracing everyday things. Like they're cooking and they're cooking in their pajamas. You know, they're doing some kind of skit and they're not even dressed up in makeup and hair. They're just doing the skit. And so I think that different platforms do different things. But if you find yourself sort of getting, you know, taxed on one particular platform, but you still want some source of entertainment. And that's the other thing about TikTok is that a lot of the young folks that I've seen comment on posts, they often talk about how they feel a sense of togetherness and belonging that in this social isolation period that we're in, they're not getting in any other way. Like they're making friends through TikTok, through this sense of authenticity. Like I really feel like I know who you are and not this sort of persona or, you know, you presenting your best self. So I do think that there are absolutely some things about social media that I don't like, and that I do think can trigger us all in some negative ways. But I do think that there are a lot of positive things that I'm experiencing, and I think a lot of other people are experiencing too.
Yeah, I have yet to go down the TikTok path yet. I'm like,
it's an addictive one.
I'm like, I don't know if I need one more place to be scrolling. So I haven't done TikTok, but of course, you know, people will still send you TikToks and then you're like, this is funny or whatever. And then you're like, in my head, I'm like, I should make a TikTok. Like, that'd be kind of dope. And I'm like, no, don't do it. I'm not going to get on TikTok. But, you know, through what I've seen, I do enjoy, you know, watching the videos that get sent to me. And I'm glad because I'm not on it. I only get like a snippet of the next one. So I can't see the whole thing. And then I'm like, all right, well, you got to get off or either join or get off. And I'm like, well, I got it. I'm just going to get off. But
Right.
someone said they just joined today. I mean, I am
Nice.
so curious. There's that part of me that's like, I just wanna go on there, but I'm like, I will never get off. So
Right.
so
Right. Right.
maybe
Right.
maybe that'll be my next venture of life, is to become a TikToker, but I don't
For
know.
sure. For sure.
So I kind of want to pivot a little bit, because there have been so many incredible things happening. We had the inauguration last week. We had, our our first woman of color vice president elected, which is incredible. So, I mean,
Yeah.
cried the whole day. That was fun, so incredible.
Right.
But,
Right.
and I know that you made a post on this on your Instagram, so I wanted to address this, but, why is the way that Kamala is portrayed in the media now so important? And then what are the dangers of mishandling this responsibility if it's not done correctly?
Yeah, so media again, there's so many opportunities. One of the benefits of the platform that is, say, television in particular, is that it informs the identity formation
Mm,
of us as we're kind of figuring out who we are, our sense of self-worth. We will often turn to TV for answers about that. Like, how should
right.
my sort of lived experience, what should that look like, right? And so seeing someone like Kamala Harris win this election and like shatter the glass ceiling, like that told, Black people, that told women what was possible for them. No matter
Hmm.
if you may never run for president, but
Right.
within your own industry, within your own sort of corporation or your field, you saw, wow, like it can be dominated by one particular group, but when we do the work and we
Hmm.
harness people, around things that matter, like we can really shake things up and make a
Right.
difference. So it's very affirming in that way. Again, it affirms what is possible.
Hmm.
And so I think it's really important, particularly for young people, to see that. And
Yeah.
then even older people,
Yeah. It's so
grandparents and things
powerful.
like that. That's powerful for them to see, because they perhaps never thought that that was possible. So life changing in that way. The dangers of it, I will say, is that there's going to be a lot of pressure on
Hmm.
her, and we saw that with Barack Obama as well. I think
Right.
that one of the great things about Kamala going into this is that she did have, say, Barack Obama ahead of her, but at
Yeah.
the same time, she's also the first woman. And I do think that in general, there's a lot of pressure on women
Hmm.
to perform, particularly Black women,
Yes.
to perform. So she will have a lot of eyes on her, but I think she's up for the job. I really
Yeah.
do. I think
Yeah.
that from everybody that I can see that is around her and surround, she's got smart people around her,
Hmm.
and I think that was another thing that Barack had going for him too, is that I don't think it's realistic to think that, oh, because Barack was president, or now that Kamala's vice president, that like
We're all
people of
good.
color have got it made. Like it
Right.
just
Like, we're
doesn't.
all
That's just
good. Yeah.
that's
Right.
just not how it works. But I do think that they have enough really smart people around them
Hmm.
that is going to make a huge difference to have them in that seat.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I
Yeah.
mean, even just seeing afterwards, seeing all the pictures, and I'm friends with kids, with of seeing it for the first time, or even just even for me, I was just a crying mess, because it's just that point of, wow, like a woman can make it to that position, and what does that mean for everything else? Because there is that fear of the patriarchy. I think when you're a woman, of like, well, this is just how it is. Like, this
Right.
is how we got here. This is why we stay here. Why we
Right.
continue to stay in this place that we're in, is because of this patriarchy. And so that is so, I think for any age, it's just that like reassurance of, okay, like, we got this. I can do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
So it's great, but it is a lot of responsibility, I think, too.
Right.
And just even on the media to show, I mean, obviously you don't want anything shown in like a light, but I think that women tend to be more harshly criticized by media as well. So I'm
Absolutely.
hoping that, that she has an equal criticism, like, if you're going to criticize her for something, like, you better do the man just the same,
Right.
because I feel
Right.
like women tend to be, if we're not nurturing, if we're not viewed
Mhm.
as nurturing, or, and I know she's been criticized for many things. But she's tough. She's a tough
Yeah.
woman. I'm like
Yeah.
sitting there watching, thinking, how is she not in a bucket of
Right.
tears right now, being
Right.
sworn in? But
Right.
it's like, she's a tough woman, but because she's tough, she gets it's a negative. You know, it's seen as like, well, she's this
Right.
and she's that. But
Right.
that's also a part of the media to be like, women can be tough and they can also be nurturing. They like, and it's not just a woman's job to be nurturing. It's not just a man's job to be tough, you know?
Exactly. And those gender roles and stuff that have been sort of etched in our society, we have an opportunity to dismantle those. And I
Mm-hmm.
think what you're bringing up, Brittany, is Michelle actually went through a lot of that in the
Yes.
beginning. You know,
Yes.
they didn't like that she wore her arms out. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they felt like she had very harsh features and she didn't smile enough. And I now since she's left, it's almost like her platform has grown, her
Right.
exposure. I think she's gone on to like become like the most our favorite, you know, first
Right.
lady and things like that. So I do think that the opportunity we have as just citizens and people who have social media and can harness it for good is to hold space and, you
Mm-hmm.
know, remind people just like you just did, like women can be strong, and you know we can make mistakes, and men make mistakes too,
Right.
and we just have
Right.
to remind people of where we come from, and that we're all human at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
and it
Yeah.
is interesting that you say about Michelle, like when she was in office, the things people were so harsh. It was a lot harsher, but now that she's out, it's like, oh my gosh, she's the greatest. She's this. Like it's like the second that she had not no power, but it was viewed as a loss of power, less power. Then it was like, oh well, she's a beautiful woman. She's
Mhm,
she's
mhm.
just so graceful. She's classic. She's these places that were previously kind of like putting her down. Now all of a sudden we're like, oh no, we love Michelle. Michelle's great. I mean,
Right.
everybody loves Michelle.
And it
I'm
speaks to
sure
the
there's some that
threat,
don't, but
right?
like everybody loves
Yeah.
Michelle. Everyone's like,
Yeah,
oh
and
my
I
god,
think
Michelle.
yeah, and it speaks, I think, often to just how threatened we feel by really
Mm-hmm.
powerful women. You know, when a woman holds her own and, you know, just is just operating in her beauty and her power, like so many people feel threatened by that. And I think a lot of men in particular
Mm-hmm.
feel threatened by that. And so I think we just have to hold people accountable and be like, mm, push it up, you know, pushing back on
Yeah.
some of those notions and some of those theories because we know them not to be true.
Yeah.
We know them not to be true. Yeah.
I'm all here for the powerful women, but now we're going to talk a little bit about men. I only had one other male on here, and sadly that episode got deleted by Instagram, but whatever, by accident. So we're going to talk a little bit about the men, but I'm curious because you talk a lot about this as well about masculinity and toxic masculinity, and so media is partly to blame for the way that men are seen in our society. How do we change that?
Yeah, I think, you know, you already said it. When we look back sort of over the history of television and film, it's been done through like what do we want the world to look like, and like how do we maintain this certain order, right?
Mm-hmm.
So within that, we've had a lot of, you know, sort of traditional values and you know, gender roles just sort of again be etched in our storytelling, right? In a way that men often adopt those attitudes and those behaviors. Again, when you identify with a certain character on a show, you know, research shows you will often adopt some of those
Mm-hmm.
behaviors in the way that you know, carry out your life and the way you
Mm-hmm.
think and stuff. So, yes, to your point, media's definitely played a huge role in how men show up, but I think in terms of changing that conversation, we're doing that one by having the conversation that we have right now to just
Right.
call it out for what it is, because we have to do that. But I'm already seeing some changes, Brittany. You know, I think I was just reading an article like a week ago where like Shonda Rhimes and Ryan Murphy and some of those, they were just, you know, being highlighted for how their storytelling, the characters, whether it's more women leading roles,
Right.
LGBTQ plus characters, that's huge. You know, we've got to
Mm-hmm.
have, going back to the whole notion of gatekeepers, we've got to have those people pushing that needle forward. You know, the work that we're doing over at Men Talking Shift, for anybody who's not familiar, there's an initiative that I'm a part of that I founded called Men Talking Shift, where that is really at the heart of this and soul of the work that we're doing. And I
Mm-hmm.
know that the work that we're doing is paying off because think it might have been yesterday, two days ago, had a gentleman comment on one of the posts to say, "I'm so glad to know that there are men like that, like men that think like this exist."
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that's, at the end of the day, that's what it's about, is we have to see more models. We have to see templates. We have to see examples of how to show up as men,
Right.
not through trying to maintain this patriarchal, order, but like, what do real, genuine, authentic men who are fully aware of themselves, fully aware of their emotions, what does that look like? And we have
Mm-hmm.
to put that on display.
Yeah, and I love that. And I've been finding myself following a lot of different men with that type of perspective. And I mean, as a woman, it's really refreshing to follow those types of accounts. And I know a lot of it's like male driven content. It's for the men to read, but I think there is, I mean, obviously there's women that read it as well. But for me, being able to see that type of man or that type of thinking from a man really changes a lot for me, because I've been in spaces where, I mean, all women have, where we're like, screw men, I hate all men. You're just in that place like, men suck, men are this, men are dogs. And it's that, and you just get in that because of your one experience with one guy or a couple guys or whatever it may be. And then we go into this whole all men are this space. And it's been so refreshing and that's where I've found the joy in social media, is being able to find these accounts. It's like, oh, some men think differently, and there are all kinds of men, just like there's all kinds of women. But it's easy when you're on the other side, especially when you're a woman and I'm single, for example, and I'm just like, come on, where is the vulnerability, where is all these things? But I think also men are just not taught to be vulnerable. Men are not taught to save space for each other, even, so
Absolutely.
and I think, yes, there, as women, we, and the nurturers that we are seem to be, or are supposed to be, we often hold space for men, but it's not seen that men are holding space for each other, which is huge, because that's, I think, where women and men differ a little bit, is that we hold space for each other. And that's why there's those, there is more of that like nurturing feeling, I think, of between women and the sisterhood and the friendship. And there is that brotherhood between men, but it's definitely in men who can hold space for other men. It's not just like, oh, he's a man, he's my brother. It's like, you have
Right.
to hold the space.
Right. Yeah, and I think there's a revolution happening, I feel like, because men are discovering that the act isn't fulfilling.
Mm.
We've put on an act for centuries now, and when we look at the trauma and the intergenerational trauma that's happening, and we go back and we start looking at our dad and our grandfathers, like, when did this ever work?
Mm-hmm.
When did this whole sort of not asking for help or seeking help, when did this whole like being dominant for, the sake of others, and putting women down and not paying them equal, when did that really ever truly benefit us as
Mm.
a whole? You maybe you did win in that instance or in that moment, but people were suffering around
Right.
you while you were winning. So when did this ever work? And so I hope that more men are coming into that awareness and, seeking out like an account like Men Talking Shift,
Mm-hmm.
or a
Yeah.
conversation like we're having right now. I'm hoping that more men are finding value in people holding space for them like this.
Right. And do you find, just kind of from a side perspective, and to kind of open it up a little bit more, do you find that in the Black community, this is something that is more difficult, or have you studied, I don't know, but that it's more difficult to achieve this vulnerability in the Black community than it is in other communities, or
Well,
even BIPOC communities?
yeah, well, I mean, we absolutely, as BIPOC people, we have unique histories and
Mm-hmm.
backgrounds that do make us more vulnerable. I think you just didn't have time to be emotional, like,
Mm-hmm.
whether you were, working on the plantation, or, trying to hold down the family while, maybe a partner was off fighting. Like, you just didn't have space to be vulnerable because you were
Mm.
always sort of having to survive.
Right.
We've just
Right.
always had to survive. And so I'm hoping now that with so many things shifting, that we're able to hold space for each other in a way that we just didn't have time, energy,
Mm-hmm.
resources, tools before. I
Right.
think people would be hard pressed now to say that we don't have the resources and tools to live in a better, more healthy, emotional way.
Right. Right.
They're out there. I mean, you
Right.
have to seek them and you have to pursue them diligently, vigilantly. But they're out there. The resources are there. Now it's just a matter of you showing up and
Right.
doing the work.
And
Yeah.
what could you say as women what we can do, because from obviously from my experience I'm a woman. So what is the best thing for me to do as a woman to support that and in a man and in a friend, in a father, and in a loved one? Like what is the best way to support that work and support that journey from the woman's side, would you say?
Yeah. I saw, it's funny you bring this up. There was a post that was on Twitter today. I actually posted it on my story, but it was posted by a gentleman and he was talking about how he and his wife have been able to find a way to not argue as much as
Mm,
they used to. And he said, anytime somebody's having a bad day, they will ask the other one, do you want comfort or do you want solutions?
that's so
And I
good.
think that's such a beautiful way to sort of respond to the question that you're asking. I believe men, whether it's with their partner, girlfriend, best friend, or whatever, a lot of times we just want comfort.
Mm,
And we've never really felt like we've had people just hold us for comfort,
right.
And sometimes comfort is just listening.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes comfort is just like sitting beside them on the couch while they
Right.
talk about that shitty thing that happened to them
Right,
yesterday.
right. That's
You
that's
know,
incredible. I love that question. That's a really
yeah,
good
I
question.
think that's such a great way, and I think it works again in the reverse.
Right.
I think a lot of times, perhaps women aren't necessarily looking for you to come in and that whole damsel in distress and save the day, but
Mm-hmm.
can you just be there?
Yeah.
Can you
Can you
just be
not
there
can you
and
not
hold
give me the
space?
answers and just listen?
Right,
Yeah. I
right,
mean even
yeah.
like, I live with my brother and I think he's listening. So hey there, CJ. But
What's up, CJ?
I think that's something that even I think that, we can implement together as being like brother and sister. We don't argue a lot or anything, but it's like it's still even that question of like, hey, like do you want comfort? Do you want solutions? Do you like what do you need? And I think a lot of it is that we're not saying what we need
Yeah, yeah,
at all.
yeah.
Like women, men, anybody. We're
Right.
just not saying what we need. I know this is not necessarily on the topic of media, but it's like all kind of comes together. But
Absolutely.
we don't say, and I've been on a journey of that this past like couple months of like say what you need, say how you feel, like and then stand by that. And it's okay to feel that. But
Yeah,
also you need somebody or people in your life that you're comfortable saying like this is what I need and them
right,
respecting that. So
right,
like, there's parts to it, but
right.
like working on like truly working on finding people that I can have in my life that I can say, hey, I need this from you. Hey, I don't really need that from you right now, but I could use this from you.
Yeah,
Like I could use
yeah.
some support, but I don't really need like all the extra right
Right.
now.
Right. And I think one of the most simple ways to sort of get after that comfort or solutions is to just ask people, how can I support you?
Mm,
Because that leaves it wide open. Sometimes people just need
right.
to pray for them.
Mm,
Sometimes somebody may be out of money and they need a loaf of bread.
right.
Like when you ask somebody, how can I support you? It just completely opens up to them being able to get what they really need from you.
Yeah, it's the communication is so, I think that we think of communication as kind of like we're all like, communication is so important. And we say it, and I've said it a million times until I had to realize like how truly important communication really is and what that looks like. Not just saying communication is important, but if communication is important to you, being able to receive what's communicated back to you and not just say, like, oh, I love communication, but then when you hear what you don't like, you're like, I don't like to communicate that much. Like, what I mean?
Exactly.
I don't really want to
Exactly.
communicate about that. And
Right.
that's like the space that we get into. It's like, if communication is truly important, you have to hold space for even the things you don't want to hear.
For sure. 1000%.
I've
Yeah.
been on a journey. Clearly, we'll have to
We all
chat.
are.
We'll have to chat offline. No,
All
but
right.
no, but
All right.
it's been very eye opening to like like, you desire communication. What does that actually look like? And all the things you ask for. What does honesty actually look like? Like, it's great to say, I want honesty, I want transparency, I want communication, I want support, I want growth. But when someone then challenges you in that growth and you're like, I don't like this, it's like, that's what you said. And you don't get to choose what growth looks like. You don't get to choose what communication looks like. You just get to work through it. So
exactly.
It's fun.
That's
it's fun. Like, realizing you're not in control of any of that. So, hey,
right.
Fun stuff.
No,
so, as just a question, with everything that's going on, because there is so much going on. I mean, from the insurrection and from just everything that's been the past like few years. And maybe, and even with COVID and the news cycle is a lot of negativity and a lot of things that are scary. So, and I don't have children, and I know you also did a post about this on your Instagram about talking to your children about what's going on or what happened at the Capitol or just in general. So how do we people as parents, not we, but how do we control or help with the negative media exposure it's going to come their way?
For sure. So it is connected to the technology and the social media and all that piece, but it's also outside of it. Is that we've always got to be fostering the type of relationship dynamic where our kids feel comfortable to talk to us about anything. Like, it's got to start there, right? And that can start in the early years. I was just having a talk yesterday about how as early as like 2 years old, a kid will ask if they see like their mom's pregnant or they see a lady, they want to know like, well, how did the baby get in your belly? How's the baby going to get out? With those types of conversations, as young as they are, you're already able to plant seeds around sexuality and gender, right? You can begin to talk to them at their age, right? Being appropriate in terms of their age and understanding and all of that stuff. But you're already beginning to talk to them about things that as they continue to evolve and grow and their body changes and they get into puberty and then they get on YouTube or they get on the internet and they see a lot of different things, you've already laid the foundation for, in this family, in this house, we can talk about anything, right? And so I think that is, to me, that is the jumping off point. Because it's unrealistic to think that we can control every single thing that our kids see and come across. It's just not realistic. But if you can create a safe space, a safe haven as they're encountering certain things, cyberbullying, when the Capitol was, under siege and they have feelings of fear, they need to be able to come to you and express, Mom, I'm scared. Dad, George Floyd, I'm a Black boy, like, could that happen to me? They need to be able to have conversations about the things that they're seeing because, again, you can't control and block every single thing. Now, there are certain measures, especially with our younger kids, for sure you want to be controlling and monitoring screen time. I'm seeing families now say, all right, dinner time is no phones. Everybody put their phone away. So you can put certain practices in place in your home to shield some of that, right? But I think the biggest takeaway I tell parents when they ask me about, technology and social media and, I can't control what they see. I'm like, you're right. You can't control what they see, but you can control the space in which you're creating that they can talk to you about what they're seeing.
What they do see. Yeah, that's so important. And, I think I feel lucky that I grew up in a place where I felt, comfortable talking. So I think that's super important to be able, and hopefully if I have kids one day, I will be able to implement that as well. Cause that is such good advice of like from the very beginning, making it an availability to have that conversation. And so then it's not taboo when it comes up, or it's not scary when it comes up, and, and just like, oh, that, that's what this is. And it's not, it's not an issue. So I really like that. And we're so short on time. I can talk to you forever, of course, because we're friends. But I did want to ask you kind of, because you are a man that wears many hats, no pun intended, but you are a man that wears many hats. And so one of those is also a writer and producer. And so, which is awesome because now you have this doctorate of an understanding of media. So how have your studies affected the way in which you tell your stories?
Right. So that question is so loaded because on one end of it, it has made me so critical of so much,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It's sometimes it's even hard now to watch shows. There are some that are doing so many amazing, brilliant things that I've gotten a chance to watch just during the pandemic. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I can see where there's a lot of opportunity here for conversation and some positive change. But I would say ultimately what it's done is it's opened me up to, for one, always want to tell authentic stories
Mm.
because those are the ones that are game changers.
Right.
The I'm trying to think of like This Is Us is one of my favorite ones.
Mm-hmm. Like such a great show.
Yeah, like just so many intricate layers that just explore trauma and secrecy in our families and issues around body image and addiction. Like
Mm-hmm.
those are the
Yeah, it
types of
covers.
shows that I look for, but that's also holding me accountable as a
Mm.
writer because I see where this is effective, but then I also sometimes see where we aren't represented or
Mm.
when I still don't necessarily see characters like me,
Right.
that there's an opportunity there. Like, yeah, you're dealing with themes, but there needs to be
Right.
people with the same skin color, same
Right. Right. That
sexuality
it's
or
not the same
whatever.
storyline for those for the
They
same
need those
character.
lessons, and they need to see how to be able to navigate life through what they're
Mm-hmm.
experiencing. So I say all that to say it's raised the bar, if nothing else,
Yeah.
for who I want to reach and the stories that I want to tell.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
all about, at the end, representation when you get there too. It's like, you're talking about seeing yourself in the stories. And I don't know if you've seen The Politician on Netflix.
I have. I've seen
Um,
season one. I need to watch season two.
so good. I really, really love that show. But I
Yeah.
love that there are characters. There is a transgender character. It's never discussed, not once in the storyline about anything. It is what it is.
Yeah.
It is, and I love that. And because I feel like you don't really see that anymore, or not anymore at all in the first place. And just like not really discussing a character's background, or Sylvie's Love, for example, which was about a Black couple in a time where race relations were a big deal. And yes, there were calls to Martin Luther King Jr. and things like that, but it wasn't a story about racism, which was like, oh my gosh, like this is a story about
Absolutely.
Black people in that time period that's not
Right.
about racism. It was, that
Right.
movie blew my mind. It's
Right.
probably besides the fact it's a love story and I'm like super in love with it. But I'm
But
like,
that's the
this is
other thing,
one of my
though.
favorites.
Yeah, that's another opportunity we have with the media is that as we're learning about race and identity and gender and disabilities, even, like,
Mm,
it's really important to tell stories outside the experience of struggling
yeah, yeah,
because we're not monolithic no matter what race you are.
right.
And so it's very important to be multidimensional and to allow your characters to experience a range of emotion, and one
Hmm.
of those being to not always be in struggle. And so
Yeah,
I think, to your point, that's beautiful that we get to see true love stories of people just navigating love. They're
yeah,
not, trying to fight the police, and we know those experiences
right.
exist, and we've seen them. So what
Hmm.
else is there?
Yeah,
What is
I
this?
loved
What
it.
else is
I
there?
loved it. And even like speaking to things like Bridgerton and things like that, it's like it is like obviously back in the time that is not how things were,
Right, right,
like
right,
people were just like mingling. And I think even I even think The Great does a little bit of that with like Catherine the Great. There's like it's just all races, and same
Mhm.
thing with like Hamilton and stuff. Things where you wouldn't actually see these people represented, being represented in those ways is so cool to me because I watch it and I don't think like this person's Black, this person's white, this person's like any of those things. I'm just thinking like
Right.
this is a great storyline. And I think the
Yeah.
more that we can continue, like even if you think of, probably the first one for me ever to see do it was Cinderella with Whitney and Brandy.
Mhm,
Like
mhm, mhm,
her
mhm,
mom,
mhm.
like
Right.
he's Asian, his mom's white, his dad's Black. Could never probably happen, like outside of adoption and everything. But it's like
Right.
you just sat there and you're like, yeah, this is cool. Like I totally believe this. This is
Yeah.
great. Like you just never
Yeah.
thought of it, and that was really to me like the first one to really do it or to bring it into that space of it. it didn't matter, race didn't matter in that sense. And I think that I like that there are shows and things and movies coming back into that, where it's just people are actors, and whoever fit the part, and that's great. And you wouldn't have this biracial thing in the time of Bridgerton. That wasn't going to happen, but here it's like everyone's encouraging it. They're like, yeah, go, like you two need to be together. So it is fun to watch that. And see that storytellers, writers, producers, that they are making the conscious choices to do that. Because it does take making the conscious choice to be like, we're not going to follow this outline, we're not going to follow this typical thing, and we're going to step outside of that.
For sure. I love it.
It's just the best. It makes me so excited. So I can't wait to see the things that you end up producing and writing in the future, because I've loved getting to see you do all that you do and bloom. I want to give you a chance, though, before we go, to just kind of plug your Men Talking Shift and your own personal account and anything that you want to plug. I want to give you the opportunity to do that before we head out of here.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, like we talked about earlier, Men Talking Shift. Please check us out. We're just on social media right now, but we try to post a lot of thought-provoking quotes and ideas to get people talking and having some conversations in their relationships and their friendships and their families even. So definitely check us out. Of course, you can check me out on social media. I try to always post something that is thought-provoking, inspiring, informative on some level. But and I'm looking forward to, I'm starting a TV pilot intensive in about a month. And the goal of that is to finish what will be my first scripted show. So most of my work since I've been in LA has been unscripted. So I'm really excited to tap into the scripted world, particularly through this media psychology lens. So just follow me and I'll be sharing updates on that journey.
I'm here for it. I can't wait to watch. I will tag, for those of you who just joined us, we're wrapping it up, but this is going to be on my podcast tonight. It'll be up a little bit later tonight. So you can listen anywhere you listen to your podcast, but then also this will be on IGTV. If you're someone that prefers to watch things, you can watch it right after this if you missed any of the beginning. Also, I will tag all of those things that Corey talked about, his Men Talking Shift. I'll tag his Instagram, all that, so you can follow along there. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day, and I'm sad this is the only way I see you now, but it
won't be like this forever.
I know it won't be like this forever. We will survive. So we're gonna make it through. But I just wanted to thank you again for taking the time to spend with me and share your knowledge, because I think so much of what you shared was resonating with people. As I read the comments, it's just like those things that click, and those understandings of what it is that media is. And obviously it's such a broad topic that we could talk about forever, but
we'll do this again.
Right. We can do this whenever we want to. That's the beautiful part about it. We can always just sign up. But thank you so much for just being a part of this. And I will be seeing you on Instagram, but everybody else, please continue to follow. I'll be back next week with another new episode, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys.
Bye.